Hi, this is Ms. Fennell here talking to you guys today about leaf notes and leaves and what you're going to need to know next week and the week after to help you identify leaves. So we'll be making leaf collections this week. We're going to hopefully, if the weather is permitting, those of you doing distance learning will be doing this at home, and those of you in person learning, we're hoping this week we can get out and do some leaf collecting. So you're going to need to, these are some of the things you're going to need to understand in order to be able to identify leaves. For our purposes, we're going to be working with trees native to Minnesota. There's lots of trees around that are planted that kind of come from other places. And so we're just going to work on Minnesota leaves. All right. There are two types of leaves or trees in Minnesota. There's the coniferous or evergreen leaves or needles that stay green all year. That would be your pine trees. And there's all kinds of different pine trees. They are evergreen, they have needles, and their needles are actually leaves. And so pine needles, believe it or not, are the leaves, and they keep their leaves all year, of course, and that's why we also call them evergreen. We also have deciduous trees, are trees with broad leaves that change color and fall off in the fall. That's where the word fall comes from. So all of your leaves that have, what you might think of as regular leaves on them, those are called deciduous. So one of the first choices, we're going to teach you how to use something next week called a dichotomous key. And one of the first things you're going to need to know is your leaf coniferous or is it deciduous? And so that's the first thing you need to know. Coniferous leaves can be one of two kinds. You can have scale-like leaves, or you can have more of the needles. The scale-like leaves come from plants like cedars, this kind of thing. And the needles come from your firs and your pines and your spruces. So if you have a coniferous tree, it's going to ask you if the leaves are more like this, that's the scale-like ones, or more like this, those are the needle-like ones. Coniferous trees also grow their seeds in cones, and this is where the name cones comes from, are coniferous because of the word cone. You can actually see within these pine cones, if you kind of shake them, sometimes you can actually get the seeds to fall out. We'll also see when we're using our dichotomous keys that to identify these trees, when you look at the pine needles on the branch, the pine needles are attached to the branch. They can be attached in bundles. And so the pine needles might be attached to the tree in bundles of 2 or 3 or 4 or what have you. Deciduous trees are the ones that lose their leaves in the fall, and we're actually doing this project about a week earlier than we had originally planned because we had kind of an early frost this year, and our trees are changing color even earlier than they typically would. And so those are the ones we see that are all kinds of colors. Why do leaves change their color in the fall? There are actually several steps to understanding the answer to that question. It's actually a more complicated answer than you might think. First of all, we need to know why the leaves are green. Leaves are green because they have a chemical in them that's called chlorophyll. We're going to learn a lot more about this throughout the year, but this is the chemical that absorbs sunlight so that plants can do photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is the process where plants take sunlight and use that energy to turn it into sugar, to turn it into food for the plant. And of course, that process is happening mostly in the leaves, and it's the chlorophyll that absorbs the sunlight. So plants are green because they have chlorophyll, and the chlorophyll's job is to absorb sunlight for the plant. In the wintertime, leaves can't survive freezing temperatures. A leaf cannot do its job in the wintertime because it needs water, it needs liquid water in order to do that job. And so in the wintertime, those leaves have to go and they have to be gone for winter. Also, if you had leaves on the trees all winter, they would probably get too heavy and break the tree. That's true of almost all trees except for things like red oak trees. Red oak trees keep their leaves actually throughout the winter and don't lose them until the new buds push the old ones off. in late winter. So we know the trees have to lose their leaves, and so they can't survive the winter, so the tree has to lose its leaves. The thing about that is the trees have put a lot of nutrients into those leaves. It takes a lot of nutrients to build up chlorophyll. So before the leaves are dropped, the tree tries to save the nutrients from them. It kind of tries to take out of the leaves all that it can before the leaf falls. And so the chlorophyll actually gets broken down and reabsorbed. The parts of that get reabsorbed, and that leaves the yellow and orange colors behind. And so we can see the yellows are called and oranges are called carotenoids, and they also help with photosynthesis, and they're usually covered up by the green chlorophyll. Some trees actually make extra help chemicals to help with this process, and those would be the red colors that we see. And so the trees are just breaking down, trying to kind of reclaim the raw materials from the leaves before the leaves have to fall for the winter. So I have a couple of videos here that we're going to watch. This first one, it's a first grader question, but I think it's actually a pretty good video explaining why leaves fall. So let's watch this one real quick, and then I got one more for you.
Woo! Fall. I love fall.
Okay, that's a little cheesy.
Is to rake up a big pile of leaves and then run and jump in them. Someone named Nikhil has a question about leaves. Let's give him a call now.
Okay, he's a first grader. Should we fast forward this part? Okay, it's Nickel. He's cute. All right, there you go.
That's a great question. You've probably noticed leaves changing color in the fall, and they can be so pretty with all those different colors. Yellow, orange, red. But why do they do this? Leaves start out green, and then in the fall or autumn, they turn different colors. What do you think? Why do you think leaves change color in the fall? Now would be a good time to pause the video and discuss.
I already told you the answer, so we'll
Okay,
keep watching.
I don't know what ideas you might have come up with, but think about this. If you've ever forgotten to water a plant, you might have seen its leaves turn kind of yellow or brown. The plant is dying. Could it be that trees' leaves are changing color because the trees are dying? Well, it might look like the trees are dying. In fact, by the end of fall, the leaves actually fall off the tree. We think that might even be why we call the season fall. But think about it. A few months later, after winter has passed, springtime comes around, right? In spring, trees grow back new leaves, and they look healthy again. So when a tree's leaves change color, that probably doesn't mean it's dying or sick. Why would leaves change color in the fall then? Now, I have to tell you, this is a question that is not easy to answer. It took scientists hundreds of years to figure it out. It was a real puzzle. First, using microscopes and other tools, scientists discovered that leaves contain a green-colored substance called chlorophyll. This is actually why leaves look green. It's because they're filled with chlorophyll. But now here was the really hard part to figure out. Why do leaves stop looking green in the fall? One clue scientists discovered is that in the springtime, when a tree is growing new leaves, it has to do a lot of hard work to make chlorophyll. Chlorophyll contains special nutrients that the tree pulls from the soil around it. That's when scientists realized every fall, if a tree were to drop its leaves while they're still green, it would lose all the special nutrients that it used to make the chlorophyll. So instead of losing the leaves when they're green, trees have a way of saving some of those special nutrients. Here's what they do. Before its leaves fall off, trees pull some of the nutrients from the green chlorophyll into their branches and trunks, places where the nutrients can be stored safely during the cold winter. So you see, that's why the leaves stop looking green in the fall. The green stuff, chlorophyll, is getting taken apart and moved out of the leaves. Now, that might make you think that in the fall, the leaves should look clear-colored then, once there's no chlorophyll left in them. But it turns out that chlorophyll isn't the only colored substances in the leaves. Leaves also have substances inside them that can be yellow-colored, or in some leaves, orange-colored, or brown-colored, or in special cases, even red-colored. So when trees pull some of the chlorophyll nutrients into their trunks and branches each fall, we begin to see some of the other colored substances in the leaves: browns, yellows, oranges, or reds that are left behind. That's why leaves change color in the fall. So, in summary, when leaves change color in the fall, it doesn't mean trees are dying or sick. It took scientists a long time to figure it out, but they discovered that in fall, trees are pulling nutrients from the green chlorophyll in their leaves to store them for winter. Then, in the springtime, trees reuse those nutrients to grow a new set of green leaves.
Okay, that'll be it for that one. Hopefully. All right. And then there's one more video I have, and I really like this minute Earth, so we'll watch a few of these. This one is just a few minutes long here, so we'll watch this one too.
You've probably heard that leaves of deciduous trees change color in autumn because they lose their green chlorophyll molecules, allowing the underlying yellow and orange pigments to shine through. However, this doesn't explain why the leaves change color in the first place. Deciduous trees drop their leaves each year to avoid the high cost of winterizing them, but this seasonal shedding would be too wasteful to be worth doing if the trees lost all the valuable nutrients they laboriously extracted from the soil to build their leaves earlier in the year. So each fall, deciduous trees recycle their leaves before dropping them. That means taking apart cells and photosynthetic apparatus from the inside out in order to recoup their nitrogen and phosphorus and store it in twigs and branches until next spring. This is actually really tricky because as the disassembly starts, the chlorophyll molecules that absorb sunlight for photosynthesis are still absorbing the sun's energy. But with no photosynthesis happening, they end up passing the unused energy along to oxygen molecules, which become dangerously reactive when energized. These molecules wreak havoc, damaging the parts of the leaf that are in the process of recovering and transporting nutrients back to the rest of the tree. To keep this destruction to a minimum, leaves break down their chlorophyll into less dangerous molecules that are typically transparent, though sometimes yellow. Either way, with the bright green molecules gone, yellow and orange pigments that were there all along helping with photosynthesis are no longer overshadowed, and ta-da! Yellow and orange leaves. Some trees take an extra autumnal precaution against chlorophyll-induced destruction. As the leaf dismantling starts, they build new special pigments to shade chlorophyll from sunlight until it can be broken down. These new pigments tend to be red or purple in color, so trees that use them have red leaves in the fall, sometimes insanely bright red. In the end, these exquisite gold and russet displays help deciduous trees recover as much as 50% of the nitrogen and phosphorus from their old leaves to help grow fresh new green ones in the spring. They are perhaps the world's prettiest recycling plants.
All right, I like that one. All right, so that's why the deciduous trees are turning color in the fall. So we're going to be going out and taking leaves from several trees. And so first of all, what is a leaf? Well, the big thing about leaves is it is a site of photosynthesis. This is where sunlight is absorbed and turned into sugar. And so that's the main thing that happens there. There's a lot of different shapes and sizes. There's the blade, the broad portion of the leaf. There's the node, and this will be important later, which is where the leaf is attached to the branch. And so leaves are a pretty important part of the branch. I don't know why my screen is looking kind of weird here. All right. So when we collect leaves, the first thing we're going to look at, and you need to know this when you pull the leaf off the tree. If you pull the leaf off the tree and you bring it inside to identify it, this is the first thing you're going to have to know when you're identifying trees. You need to know if it's opposite or alternate. And all that means, it really pretty much makes sense. When you look at the branch, this would be the branch right here. If the leaves are right across from each other, we call that opposite branching. And if they're not right across from each other, they're alternating, we call that alternate. So this is one science thing that actually makes sense. Opposite branching is actually the more rare kind. There's ashes, box elders, and maples kind of are the only ones that have this for the most part in Minnesota. Most of the other deciduous trees in Minnesota are alternate. So if you do find an opposite one, you've really narrowed it down to what it could be. If it's alternate, then there's a lot more choices. Once again, you need to know this before you take the leaf off the branch, and you need to write it down as you collect the leaf because it's the first thing you're going to need to know as you identify your leaves later on. We also have two different kinds of leaves. We have what's called a simple leaf, And this is where the branch is right here and the stem of the leaf is right here. That's called a simple leaf. Over here we have what we call a compound leaf. And the compound leaf has what we call leaflets on it. And so the stem of the leaf is attached to the branch right here. And then we have all these little leaflets. And so when you look at these, this part will be green like the stem, and it's coming off the brown part here, which is the branch. So hopefully we'll show you some pictures. Those of you distance learning, I'll help you with this next week. But this is another thing you're going to need to know to identify what kind of leaf or tree you have. The compound, again, is made of these multiple leaflets. And again, you can tell it's a leaflet because there's the green stem running through here attached to the brown twig right there. Leaves can have different kinds of edges. They can have what we call a smooth edge. They can have a toothed edge. They can have teeth on their teeth, which is what I like to call doubly toothed. And then they can have lobes or kind of sections that are wavy or pointy. And so these are some of the leaf edges that will be involved in our identifications. Last but not least, we have to look at the leaf bases, and this is something that's involved. Elm trees are some of my favorite trees, and they notoriously have one side of the leaf. When I first would look at these, I thought, oh, it's just a deformed leaf or something, but actually what it is all of the elm leaves have uneven bases. One side of the base will come lower, and the other side of the leaf kind of starts farther up the stem. And that is a characteristic of those leaves, and it's one of the things we help to identify them. On this side, we have just what we would call an even base. These are even where they kind of meet at the same level, so they can be kind of either flat. There are lots of other ones too, but for the purposes of 7th grade tree identification, we'll basically just have to deal with uneven or even. You'll have to make that choice next week. So that's all we have. After you're done watching this notes video, we're going to have you go into the materials tab and grab the Leaf Notes 1 questions. There's 10 questions there for you to do. Should be pretty easy if you've listened to the end of this video. Thanks a lot and have a great day.